السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. ثم سوء الحفظ وهو السبب العاشر من أسباب الطعن، والمراد به من لم يرجح جانب إصابته على جانب خطئه، وهو على قسمين: إن كان لازما للراوي في جميع حالاته فهو الشاذ على رأي بعض أهل الحديث، أو إن كان سوء الحفظ طارئا على الراوي إما لكبره أو لذهاب بصره أو لاحتراق كتبه أو عدمها، بأن كان يعتمدها فرجع إلى حفظه فساء، فهذا هو المختلط. والحكم فيه أن ما حدث به قبل الاختلاط إذا تميز قبله، وإذا لم يتميز توقف فيه، وكذا من اشتبه الأمر فيه، وإنما يعرف ذلك باعتبار الآخذين عنه. Moving on to the 10th reason for defamation, Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentions that the reason why a person's narration could be left out is because of his weak memory. So he says, ثم سوء الحفظ, then having a weak memory, وهو سبب العاشر من أسباب الطعن, and this is the 10th reason for defamation. والمراد به, now explaining what's the meaning of a person's weak memory. When can we consider a person as if he had a weak memory? So he says, من لم يرجح جانب إصابته على جانب خطئه, that the narrator's ability to be correct is outweighed by his tendency to be incorrect. Also, you can say that he's more incorrect, he's more correct than he is incorrect. So majority of the things which he memorizes, he remembers accurately. Yes, there are the few times when he does make a mistake. So this seems to be the exact same as the third reason of defamation. You should remember, it was fuhshul ghalat. So fuhshul ghalat is also where a person makes more mistakes and his accuracy is less. So the difference here will be in the amount of mistakes. And under the third point, it means that a person really makes a lot of mistakes. So he makes, like the word fuhshul ghalat, so he makes like 80%, 90% mistakes. And here it means that even if it's 51% he's making mistakes, that shows that he has a weaker memory. So here he clearly mentions that the person is not more correct compared to how he is incorrect. That means he's incorrect most of the times, and less of the times he is correct. So that means that a person will be considered to have a weak memory only if his mistakes are more than his accuracy. But you remember earlier he gave the summary, he mentioned all 10 points. So if you go back to page 89, you saw there that he mentioned all the 10 points. So there he said, أَوْسُوءُ حِفْظِهِ وَهِيَ عِبَارَةٌ عَمَّنْ يَكُونُ غَلَطُهُ أَقَلَّ مِنْ إِصَابَتِهِ. That's how it is in the print of Sheikh Nuruddin Itr. That su'ul hifz, it is where a person's mistakes are less than the amount of times when he is accurate. So that means mistakes are more, accuracy is less. And what he's explaining here is that the mistakes are more and the accuracy is less. So it seems like there is a bit of a mix-up. So although in his print, Alama Rahili, he mentioned that أوسوء حفظه وهي عبارة عمن يكون غلطه أقل من إصابته. And in the footnote he wrote, هذا هو الصواب كما في الأصل وفي بعض النسخ التي اطلعت عليها عن ألا يكون غلطه أقل، وهذا غلط واضح وعكس للمقصود من العبارة. He's mentioning that the way it comes in some, where he's saying that the amount of times when he's accurate is more, that actually is taught, it contradicts what Ibn Hajar rahmallah is trying to mention here. So basically the crux is that Ibn Hajar is trying to mention here that the mistakes must be more than the accuracy. Then you will say that a person has a weak memory. So in lesson 73, we cited some quotations and we proved that the way Sheikh Nuruddin Itr mentioned it, it's not entirely correct. So that would serve as a response for what Alama Qasim rahmallah also wrote here. So Alama Qasim, he made a i'tiraz here and he said, هذا ينافي ما تقدم من قوله أو سوء حفظه وهي عبارة عمن يكون غلطه أقل من إصابته. You see, this is how he had it in his print. And bear in mind that he's a student of Ibn Hajar. So you can imagine from the very earlier prints of this kitab. So you're saying that in his print, it's also like that the mistakes are less than the amount of time that a person is accurate. That's how it is on page 89. وَقَدْ أَصْلَحْتُهُ بِلَفْظٍ. So you say that I took the liberty of correcting it myself and put the words there, نَحْوًا مِنْ إِصَابَتِهِ. وَاللَّهُ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى أَعْلَمُ. Thereafter he says that when Ibn Hajar was explaining this year, then Ibn Hajar also explained to them that he said, فَهُمْ مَنْ لَمْ يُرَجَّحْ إِمَّا بِأَن يُرَجَّحْ جَانِبُ خَطَئِهِ أَوْ اسْتَوَيَا. This is how Ibn Hajar explained this portion when they reached this portion of the kitab. So he's saying that here when he's talking of Sayyi al-Hifz, then it refers to a person who we could either say that his mistakes are more, so that means بأن يرجح جانب خطئه, his mistakes are more, أو استويا, or maybe the amount of times that he is accurate and correct and the amount of times when he makes mistakes are equal. Hence Mullah al-Qari rahmallah explains سواء كان مساويا أو أكثر. It's irrespective of whether his mistakes are equal to the amount of times when he is correct أو أكثر, or maybe his mistakes are more. وأما إذا كان غلطه أقل من الإصابة أو قليلا بالنسبة إليها فهو مقبول. If his mistakes are few, it's lesser than the amount of times that it's very few times he makes mistakes, then he's saying that فهو مقبول, because every person makes mistakes. Even the greatest imams would make mistakes. So based on this point here, Allama Qasim now is saying هذا يؤيد أن قوله فيما تقدم في حد سوء الحفظ. He's going back there to that text on page 89 when Ibn Hajar was giving the summary, and he's saying وهو عبارة عما يكون خطأه كإصابته من النسخ الصحيحة. So again he's saying that in some of the accurate manuscripts of his times, it also comes there that it is where the person's mistakes are equal to the amount of times when a person was correct. بخلاف أقل من إصابته. It's not less than the amount of times when he is correct. فإنها مخالفة لما هنا, because then that would contradict what is here. وليست بصحيحة من جهة المعنى. You see that even if you have to logically look at it, it will not be correct. Why? لأن الإنسان ليس بمعصوم من الخطأ. Because every human being, irrespective of how great he was, irrespective of what a good memory he had, it is inevitable that there will be times when he will make mistakes. فلا يقال في من وقع له الخطأ مرة أو مرتين أنه سيء الحفظ. So if a person only made one or two errors, then we cannot say that this person here has a weak memory. وإن كان يصدق عليه أنه خطأه أقل من إصابته. Although you could say that his mistakes are less than the amount of times when he was accurate. لأنه لم يصدق عليه أنه لم ترجح إصابته. So Mullah al-Qari now is explaining, so it's all because of this difference in the nuskhas. Basically at both places, the point which Ibn Hajar rahmallah wants to get across is that a person makes more mistakes than compared to the time that he is correct. So Mullah al-Qari explains وهذا الخطأ مبني على خطأ النسخة التي اعتمد عليها التلميذ. That all this here is based on the incorrect or inaccurate manuscript which Allama Qasim rahmallah had. وإلا فالنسخة الصحيحة المعتمدة فيما تقدم وهي عبارة عن ألا يكون غلطه أقل من إصابته. So there the word la, so the word la was left out. So this is what Mullah al-Qari rahmallah explains. And then there is another issue which came about here, and that is in some manuscripts this portion. So now not on page 89, this portion here in this text you can see the word lam yarjah. The word lam is omitted. So Allama Wajiuddin Gujarati, he mentioned from his teacher Abu Barakat that he told them that أخبرني بعض إخواني, that some of my companions, they told me أنه سأل السخاوي عنه, that they asked the direct student of Ibn Hajar rahimahullah, and he said وقع لفظ لم غلط من الناسخ. The word lam which is written here, it's actually a mistake. وأخرج نسخة من عنده, and Allama Sakhawi brought his personal manuscript. وَلَيْسَ فِيهِ لَفْظ لَمْ, and in his manuscript the word lam is not there. But we can see in our manuscript here, Shaykh Nuruddin Utr put the word lam, and that is why it's وَالْمُرَادُ بِهِ مَنْ لَمْ يَرْجَحْ جَانِبُ إِصَابَتِهِ عَلَى جَانِبِ خَطَئِهِ. So basically what happened is, because looking at it on page 89, now to try to make both portions conform to one another, some felt that here the word lam is not here because maybe they had it incorrect on page 89, so now they wanted this to conform what that. But this is the nuskha which we are using. It is the most accurate nuskha, and it's even more accurate than the nuskha which Allama Sakhawi rahmallah had, and therefore the word lam here is correct. So that means it's such a person who is not more correct compared to what he is incorrect. So is basically he's incorrect most of the time and he's correct less of the time. Besides logically understanding that this is a person whose mistakes are more, this is also confirmed, Allama ibn Salah rahmallah, when he's explaining to us how to determine the memory of a person. Then you remember on page 106 we done it. يعرف كون الراوي ضابطا بأن نعتبر الروايات برواية الثقات المعروفين بالضبط والإتقان. فإن وجدنا روايته if we have to find that his narrations conform with those who are all reliable ولو من حيث المعنى لرواياتهم وموافقة لها في الأغلب والمخالفة النادرة عرفنا حينئذ كونه ضابطا ثبتا. وإن وجدناه كثير المخالفة في فينهم فإن وجدناه كثير المخالفة لهم عرفنا اختلال ضبطه. He's saying then we will know that his memory is weak. So this here is talking about weak memory. Ibn Hajar himself is saying to Masu' al-Hifz. So how can we know that a person has a weak memory? It's because most of the time he is contradicting those who have good memories. Say Ibn Hajar rahmallah says, إن كان لازما للراوي في جميع حالاته. If it is something which is دائما غير منفك, it's perpetual, all the time the person has a weak memory. So a person's weak memory could be innate, it could be he's created like that, it's perpetual. And this here is a reality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created different people with different talents. That is why we always also advise students to first reflect and to think properly and determine in which area they have been divinely blessed. Because some might not manage to grasp and understand very well, but they have amazing skills in dealing with the youth, in counseling, or maybe in opening makatib. So then if a student is like that, the minute he qualifies, he should start to work. He shouldn't break his head now trying to learn intricate stuff. He's not cut out for that. Rather, he should utilize his efforts and his energies in the field which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with. Likewise, every mufti is not competent enough to arbitrate. So some might excel in tahqiq, but now bring a husband and wife who are having an argument in front, and you might not be able to arbitrate between. So this is why every person needs to recognize their strong points and their weaknesses. So maybe the person here, he has a weak memory. It's like that. He was created like that with this weak memory. في جميع حالاته. So throughout his life, he always had a weak memory. It is not because of some temporary reason. Like it's not because of amnesia or dementia or because of some reason like that. So this means that there was no stage in this person's life when he had a good memory. Throughout his life, he was always like this. He struggled to memorize. He struggled to retain whatever he learned. So Allama al-Laqani explained this here. ظاهره صغرا وكبرا. Whether he was a young boy, after he grew up, still he had a weak memory. وصحة ومرضا. When he's healthy also, when he was sick also. مع وجود الكتب وعدمها. Whether the books are in front of him or not. وفي حالته العمى والبصر. Whether he was blind, whether he could see, in all circumstances, he had a weak memory. So he's saying for who was shadh, that this year is considered as a shadh. But now this is completely different from the meaning of shadh, which Ibn Hajar rahmallah mentioned earlier. And it's also all what we discussed in lesson 52. Likewise, it contradicts the meaning of shadh according to Ibn Salah rahimahullah. And therefore scholars here objected. So in Yawaqit wa Durar, Allama Munawi rahmallah said, قال بعض من لقيناه وما ذكره المؤلف فيه مسامحة. That there is a mistake here. It's سوء الحفظ لا يوصف بالشذوذ. That no one will ever say that a person, because he has a weak memory, so therefore it will be his narrations will be shadh. وكذلك لا يوصف بالاعتداد. And Mullah al-Qari rahmallah said that وَفِيهِ أَنَّ الْمُخْتَلَطَ صِفَةُ الرَّاوِي عَلَى مَا يَقْتَضِيهِ كَثْرَةُ قَوْلِهِمْ. That when the person heard, then most of the time they would say اختلط فلان وهذا المعنى غير المعاني المذكورة للشاذ. So this is not the meaning of shaz, and therefore he says that Ibn Hajar clarified it and said على رأي بعض أهل الحديث. So yeah, when you are learning نخبة الفكر of by heart, then you learn it as على رأي. So the usual thing comes about that in the matan in نخبة الفكر it comes with the tanween, and when you're looking at the sharh, then it becomes a mudaf, and therefore it becomes بعض أهل العلم. Although if Ibn Hajar rahmallah really wanted to be particular, then it would be easy for him, like Kamal ibn Abi Sharif, he said it was so simple. لا يقبل دمج يقال على رأي هو رأيه بعض أهل الحديث. That's, you could have simply just said it like that there, and in that case it would fulfill the general laws. But we said that it's his kitab, he could do what he wanted to with his kitab. So he's saying it's the view of some scholars of hadith that they would call it. So you have a narrator who's making mistakes, then they would call that narration shaz. But he said, in Alam al-Qani says, وَعَلَى رَأْيِ الْجُمْهُورِ هُوَ مِن مُطْلَقِ الضَّعِيف. They would say that he is al-da'if. When they find that he's making lots of mistakes, they would just say that his narrations are weak. So this here is the one type of person who is being referred to in the standpoint. Weakness of memory is a reason for defamation. But since Ibn Hajar rahmallah brought this here as the 10th point, it means that the weakness is really minimal. Because you remember Ibn Hajar rahmallah, he said that he's mentioning all of this here according to the Tadalli, that means coming from the highest to the lowest. So this here is it means it's extremely minimal amount of weakness. Now he's going to explain the next scenario. Yes, unless you want to create a distinction between this and the earlier point, fuhshul ghalat, by saying that all that we discussed until now, Ibn Hajar rahmallah was actually explaining what ought to be under the section of fuhshul ghalat, and only now from the second point, that is what Ibn Hajar rahmallah is referring to in this point here. So it's something which you can apply your mind to and see if that is a possible meaning to take from this here. So nevertheless, the second scenario is where a person was known to have a good memory. Throughout his life, everybody knew that this person here, his memory is photographic. Tell him a hadith once and he memorizes it. But then he started to lose his memory. So there was a stage in his life when the hadith was well preserved by him, but then another stage in his life when he could not be relied upon. So this is what Ibn Hajar rahmallah says. He said, "Oh, in kana su'ul hifdh tari'an 'ala rawi." Maybe for a temporary reason, the narrator has a weak memory. So a person could probably have the best of memories, but due to some sickness, or maybe because of some other reason, he becomes disorientated. So Ibn Hajar rahmallah explains few different ways in which a person could lose his memory. So he says, "Imma li kibarihi," maybe because of advanced age, as a person becomes older and older, he starts to lose his memory. So maybe this here could be a reason that maybe when he was young and when he was in his prime, he memorized really well. So an example of this here is Salih ibn Nabhan. So Imam Ahmad rahmallah says with regards to him that أدركه مالك وقد اختلط وهو كبير. That Imam Malik rahmallah met with him after he started to lose his memory when he became extremely advanced in age. And therefore, those who narrated from him before, then their narrations were accepted, as we'll explain shortly. So that is the one reason that the person became very old. Or the second is لَذَهَابِ بَصَرِهِ. Maybe the person lost his eyesight. Now here, blindness does not contradict memory. In fact, some of those who are visually impaired, they had the best of memories because their eyesight was taken away or the eyesight was weak, but then their memory made up for it. So this here is important to understand the reason. وَقَدْ كَانَ مُتَعَوِّدًا بِعَوْدِ النَّظْرِ فِي مَحْفُوظِهِ إِلَى أَصْلِهِ. So this here is not actually to do with memory, it's rather to do with the way of preserving the narration. So he says that maybe this person here, he was always reading from his notes and then he became blind. And now his students or anyone would take the notes and read to him. فلا يرد أن ذهاب البصر مما يقوي الحفظ لسلامة الخواطر الحادثة من النواظر. So therefore, you cannot argue and say that when a person has a weak memory, then the reason for the weak memory is because when he has weak eyesight, then generally he has a better memory. So an example of this here is, Imam Abdul Razak, rahimahullah, that he started to lose his eyesight towards the end, and he was very particular to narrate from his notes. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said, "Ataynahu qabla al-mi'atayn wa huwa sahih al-basar," that we lucky we managed to get from him a hadith before the year 200 Hijri. At that time, he still had his eyesight, and therefore he could read accurately. And then after that, he became weak. وَكَانَ يُلَقَّنْ بَعْدَ عَمَاهُ فَيَتَلَقَّنْ. That students would read to him and he would accept whatever they would read to him. So this Dhahabi Basari does not refer to memory, rather it refers to preservation. Preservation through notes, and he is unable to read it himself. أو لاحتراق كتبه. Now here he's saying maybe his books are all burnt. So this here is just merely a random example. So and therefore Mullah al-Qari rahimahullah gives other examples. أو اختراقها, that maybe it all drowned, maybe he had a leak in his ceiling and his whole house became flooded and all his books went in there. أو استراقها, they make it all rhyme. احتراق اختراق استراق. All of this here, that maybe someone came and stole all of his books. أو عدمها, maybe nothing happened to his books. His books are all there, and he just doesn't have his books at his disposal. So maybe he's narrating in his front room and the books are there in his study. Or maybe he just attempted, the book is right in front of him, but he closed the book and attempted to narrate from memory. بأن كان يعتمدها فرجع إلى حفظه. So generally he always narrates from his books and he relies upon his books, and therefore his narrations are accepted. فرجع إلى حفظه, but he attempted to narrate from his memory. فساء, and therefore he made a mistake. فهذا هو المختلط. So this is a person who you could call as a مختلط. So Mullah al-Qari mentions that you read it with a kasra on the lam as مختلط, and what مختلط refers to فساد العقل وعدم انتظام الفعل والقول. That way a person's mind becomes corrupted, and now there is no he loses the faculty of his brain. So that means he is now become totally disorientated, and because of all of these different reasons, إما بخرف أو ضرر أو مرض أو عرض من موت ابن. Maybe sometimes a family person passes away, sometimes stress, أو سرقة مال, sometimes maybe the person's wealth got stolen. So he gives the example, he says كالمسعود أو ذهاب كتب, or maybe he lost his books, or افتراقها. So all of these, yeah, if it happens that a person now he becomes so stressed out or he starts to lose his memory, then such a person will be called a mukhtalit. So this year now all learning the science of who are considered as mukhtalit, etc., who had naturally weak memories, who initially had good memories and then started to lose their memories. Allama ibn Salah rahimahullah said, هذا فن عزيز مهم. It is an extremely important section which a student should learn. And after that he said, لم أعلم أحدا أفرده بالتصنيف واعتنى به مع كونه حقيقا بذلك جدا. I think it's so important, yet nobody dedicated the time to it and attempted to write. And he's saying that this is so deserving that a person should write on this topic. However, there was one scholar before him who actually did write, and that was Allama Hazimi rahimahullah. He says, here in Yawaqit wa Durar, you find Allama Munawi says, وذكر الحازمي في he mentions that Allama Hazimi rahimahullah أنه ألف فيهم كتابا. He wrote one kitab, and it was before Allama ibn Salah rahimahullah. But because of the statement of Allama ibn Salah rahimahullah, scholars after him took inspiration, and thereafter many wrote. وقد صنف مغلطائي كتابا حافلا في المختلطين. So Allama Mughultai rahimahullah, he wrote a kitab. Now, Allama al-Qani rahimahullah, he probably forgot that Allama Mughultai was only after Ibn Salah. You know, we quote from Islah Kitab Ibn Salah. He actually based a book of his on the Muqaddamah of Ibn Salah. He was only born, like I think 46 years after Allama Ibn Salah rahimahullah passed away. But Allama al-Qani, he says that even Allama Mughultai wrote before Ibn Salah. But Allama Mughultai was, and maybe him and maybe even his father wasn't even born. So he says, وَقَدْ أَلَّفَ فِيهِ مُغُلْطَائِ وَالْحَازِمِ قَبْلَ مِنِ الصَّلَاةِ. So until here the sentence could be understood. Okay, he's saying that Allama Mughultai wrote And even Allama Hazmi wrote before Ibn Salah. So that means Allama Mughta'i wrote after, and Allama Hazmi wrote before. But thereafter he mentions فَلَعَلَّهُ لَمْ يَقِفْ عَلَيْهِمَا. Probably Allama Ibn Salah didn't come to know about both of these books. So with regards to Allama Hazmi, maybe he didn't come to know. With regards to Allama Mughta'i, he didn't even know that the person is going to be born by the name of Alauddin Mughta'i. So therefore his correction with the name of Allama Mughta'i is not correct. So Allama Mughta'i, he was born in 689 and he passed away in the year 762. And Allama Ibn Salah rahmallah, he passed away in the year 643. So long before Allama Mughta'i rahmallah was even born. Likewise, Allama Alai rahmallah, he also wrote his Kitab al-Mukhtalitin, which is printed and published by Maktaba Khaniji in Cairo, for the tahqiq of Rifat Fawza Abdul Muttalib and Ali Abdul Basit Mazid. And it's also published by Maktaba Darul Ḥadīth. And then other books which are printed likewise is also Allama Burhan al-Halabi, who passed away in 841. He wrote a kitab. And Allama Ibn Kayyal al-Kawaib al-Nayyirat fi ma'arifati man ikhtalata min al-ruwat al-thiqat. So many scholars wrote. Very recently, Muhammad Ibn Rif'at, who passed away about 16 years ago, he wrote a book titled Mu'jam al-Mukhtalitin, and that is also published. So all of these are books which are published. Now you're mentioning the ruling of it, وَالْحُكْمُ فِيهِ أَنَّ مَا حَدَّثَ بِهِ قَبْلَ الْاخْتِلَاطِ إِذَا تَمَيَّزَ قُبِلَ. That if a person, he had a good memory, so what is narrating it during the period when he had a good memory, before he started to lose his memory, then it will be accepted. وَإِذَا لَمْ يَتَمَيَّزْ تُوَقِّفَ فِيهِ. If you cannot differentiate between the two, between whether this person heard from him when he had a good memory, or whether this person heard from him after he started to lose his memory, he's saying then you make tawaqquf. You cannot accept the narration and you cannot reject the narration. وَكَذَا مَنِ اشْتَبَهَ الْأَمْرُ فِيهِ. Likewise, if we are doubtful. So here now what's the meaning of اشتبه الأمر فيه? Allama Laqani explains, فالأظهر أن معناه أن الشيخ الذي اختلف العلماء في اختلاطه وعدمه. That maybe scholars here, they differ. Did this person really start to lose his memory or not? And now we cannot really give preference. Maybe he did start to lose his memory. Maybe others find it. No, we find that his narrations are on the same pattern throughout his life. ولم يترجح لهم فيه مقال كمن ثبت اختلاطه وعدمه. So that's the difference between اشتباه and the previous one. That وإذا لم يتميز means we don't know whether this person heard from the sheikh before he started to lose his memory or after he started to lose his memory. So the sheikh definitely did start to lose his memory. وكذا من اشتبه الأمر فيه, it means that the person, the sheikh, there is doubt on him. Did he start to lose his memory, or did he not start to? Throughout his life did he have that good memory? وإنما يعرف ذلك. That means ما ذكر من الاختلاط والتمييز والاشتباه. How will you recognize all of this here? باعتبار الآخذين عنه. You need to study the lives of those who narrated from him, his students. So you need to study in which year did this student meet that particular sheikh. Like you saw earlier we quoted from Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, that he made it very clear that he heard from Abdul Razak as-San'ani before the year 200. So you take that into consideration, that which year did the person hear from him, how did he hear from him, how did he get narrations from him, etc. So this is the methods, and from there you can determine now whether you're going to accept that narration or not. So here in the footnotes, Sheikh Nuruddin Itr explains all of this. فَمَنْ عُرِفَ عَنْهُ أَنَّهُ أَخَذَ عَنِ الْمُخْتَلِطِ قَبْلَ اخْتِلَاطِهِ قُبِلَ حَدِيثُهُ وَإِنْ عُرِفَ أَنَّهُ أَخَذَ عَنْهُ بَعْدَ اخْتِلَاطِهِ لَمْ يُقْبَلْ. If it's established that the person only took from him after he started to lose his memory, then it will not be accepted. وَكَذَا إِنْ وَقَعَ الشَّكُّ هَلْ أَخَذَ عَنْهُ قَبْلَ اخْتِلَاطِهِ أَوْ بَعْدَهُ لَمْ يُقْبَلْ. So this here is, he says that even if there is doubt, then it will not be accepted. So whether you call it making tawakkuf or whether you say that it won't be accepted, the end result is the same. So this here is with regards to those who had a good memory and then they started to lose their memory. But now Allama Laqani rahmallah, he clarifies one important point, and he says هذا كله إنما هو فيما حدث به معتمدا فيه على حفظه. That here we're talking of سوء الحفظ. So all this ikhtilat, maybe the person had a good memory and then he started to lose his memory. All of this here is if he was relying on his memory. Maybe the person started to lose his memory, but then his eyesight was still good, so he would narrate from his books. أما من اعتمد فيه على كتابه فحدث منه فهو مقبول مطلقا. Then in all circumstances you should be able to accept his, because he's not relying on his memory, he's relying on the book. So alhamdulillah, we completed the 10 reasons for defamation. So please do try to make a mental note of this here, that you must be able to know that the first is thus and what points are mentioned after it, the second is thus and what points come after it. Ideally, it would have been good to give as a homework, a project, to give a summary of all 10, but I understand that you have lots of other work, so that's why I don't want to burden you with that. But at least for yourself, try to memorize the crux of all 10, and you should be able to quote it. That means if one day you're traveling somewhere and you meet someone, this is the best way of ilm, that you always think of it like this here, that one day if you're traveling somewhere and you don't have no books at your disposal, because for us that's exactly what happened. That, you know, we studied here in South Africa, and now we travel to Syria, for example, or travel to Jordan or any of these countries. So obviously at that time there wasn't all this, or there was phones, but we didn't know how to use all of that, and we couldn't even afford it. But if a student would ask us, we would have to now explain. So that's how you gauge your ilm. That can you explain to him everything, the crux of everything, without a book. So try to make a mental note and see if you can explain all this to yourself without the kitab in front of you. Inshallah. Jazakallah khairan. May Allah Ta'ala bless you. So until Thursday, Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.